Alright guys, in today's video we have some pretty interesting PlayStation information to go over. The first thing we're going to be taking some time to discuss here is how EA recently talked about the upcoming consoles, both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, and they had some pretty cool things to say about it. It definitely did a good job in getting me even more excited for what we can expect from these new consoles. And on top of that, Sony apparently put out a really interesting survey that is supposed to kind of remain a secret, but obviously it got out here and some people were sharing some of the questions that Sony was asking to kind of gauge what players want or what they would like to see from PlayStation in the future. And one of the most interesting things that I believe was talked about in the survey, or one of the most interesting questions that was asked, had to do with remote play on the Nintendo Switch, and also apparently how people would feel about a DualShock portable controller with a screen in the center, or something along those lines. So I definitely want to take some time to talk about that. If you think you're going to enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps the videos out. You guys have been really showing a lot of support here on the channel, and it is greatly appreciated. And if you want to continue to do so, just hit the like button and hit the subscribe button as well if you haven't already done that. But starting here with EA talking about the PlayStation 5, says here that EA has shared its thoughts on the next-gen consoles like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, and the company said that what it's capable of on those platforms will blow people's minds. During an investor call for EA's fiscal 2020 Q3, EA's leadership team was asked about their plans for the next-gen consoles. While EA declined to share any specific details like game titles or announcements, EA appears bullish on the generational leap that will come with the next wave of hardware. The power of the new consoles is going to be substantially greater than existing consoles, said EA CFO Blake Jorgensen during the call. We can do a lot more with the PS5 and the Xbox Series. Things we're doing will blow people's minds. Jorgensen also said that there's going to be so much innovation, not just from EA, but from the whole industry, not only with more sophisticated games, but even the creation of new genres. While EA declined to share what kind of games or experiences it's developing for next-gen consoles, the quote seems to indicate that the technology leap between the current-gen consoles like the PS4 and Xbox One to next-gen is greater than previously anticipated. There are already rumors about what kind of tech will be in the PS5 and the Xbox Series, but neither Sony nor Microsoft have confirmed specs. During a recent GDC survey, over 10% of developers said that their projects are slated for next-gen consoles. So this was actually, I think, really interesting and really telling. Something else I also do want to mention here as well is that apparently during this investor call, EA actually bumped up their sales expectations for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is their big single-player game. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, and I've been playing it. I've been actually enjoying it a bit, and I said before that I want to see a game like that do well because EA's biggest problem is this generation is that they seemingly got away from single-player games, and seeing how well this one is doing, where they are bumping it up to now they're expecting it to sell 10 million units by March 2020. I think they were originally expecting it to sell about like 7 or 8 million by that time, is a really, really good sign. I've heard that they're already working on a sequel to it, and hopefully this just means that EA is going to start doubling down on single-player games, and they realize that they can still be very lucrative, just like Sony has proven, and a few other publishers all throughout this generation. I just wanted to add that here. But yeah, hearing what EA is saying about the PS5 and the Xbox Series, I think a lot of people, or at least some people, have been pretty down, saying that, well, the next generation leap, it's not going to really be that great. It's just going to kind of be like a like more of like a half step, and we're going to see the law of diminishing returns. And I think maybe to a certain extent we will, but at the same time, I've been of the mindset that it's going to be pretty significant. And when we do see next generation games and what talented, capable studios, developers, and publishers are able to do when fully utilizing this hardware, especially from first parties, I really think we're going to see some things that do blow our minds. And this just serves to get me even more excited. We are now in February, and we still haven't heard anything officially about the PS5, but it is always a very good sign to see a big third-party publisher like this talking about these new consoles and talking about their excitement for them, and specifically talking about how I think they're going to be able to do things, or they think they're going to be able to do things and show things within their games that are just going to blow people away that they really weren't expecting. It makes me excited to see, again, future single-player titles, hopefully from EA, more of them, but I'm excited to see what they do with Battlefield 6. Apparently, the last I heard with that game, we don't really talk about games like that here much on the channel. I'm trying to make more of an effort to talk more about games. I'm a pretty big Battlefield fan. I've enjoyed this series over the years. The last thing I heard is apparently they're actually extending the development time on that game, not only so they can get it right, because they definitely had some trouble with Battlefield 5, but also so that they can, at least I'm assuming, take full advantage of the next generation tech, right? And so that way they can maybe justify not having a cross-gen Battlefield game. I can't wait to see what that would end up looking like, because something tells me it would be definitely cutting edge, because we know one thing that DICE is very good at is visuals and just doing things in that department that just leaves people with their jaws on the ground. So moving on here, talking about this survey, says here that Sony's doing some research into PlayStation 4's popular remote play feature, potentially teasing some tantalizing new ways to play. As part of a survey shared on Reddit, the platform holder asks whether respondents would be interested in streaming their games to other devices like the Nintendo Switch. It also asks whether users would be enticed by an offline version of remote play, though it does not elaborate on how this would actually work. Perhaps most interesting of all is its reference to a smaller, portable, on-the-go DualShock, which would include a screen to allow you to play your games in a more convenient Wii U-esque format. They're all interesting ideas, and while they're unlikely to all be in active production, it's fascinating to learn a little more about where the Japanese giant's mindset is at. How do you think remote play could be improved? And it goes on to ask people to leave their comments below, which I'm not going to bother reading them right now because I just want to give my thoughts on this, and I'm going to be really interested to see what you guys have to say in the comments below about this, because it's clear to me, based off of this survey, that Sony is certainly looking into more ways to get people to play their games. And I can't say that this comes as a big surprise or anything, because we know that Microsoft is doing this with xCloud. We know that Nintendo has already achieved this with the Switch itself, giving people two different ways to enjoy their games, portable on the go as well as docking it. And so it just makes sense that Sony would want to do something here, especially because we know that they're not, competing in the traditional handheld space anymore. They're not, apparent as far as we know, they're not making a successor to the Vita, and they're not doing anything more with a dedicated PlayStation handheld. It seems like the closest thing that they are going to do with this, or the thing that's closest to maybe what we would consider a traditional handheld, is this idea of a portable, small portable DualShock controller with a screen in the center. That is extremely interesting to me, because it sounds to me like that is like a dedicated cloud/remote play device, something along those lines, where you can access PlayStation Now and play it with this controller. We could see Microsoft certainly do something very similar to this in the future. In fact, I think Phil Spencer recently on his Twitter shared out that he's using this peripheral that comes from Razer, where it's essentially like a cut in half Xbox controller, and you hook it up to the sides of your phone or your tablet or something like that, which is really cool. And so it's also extremely interesting to think about Sony potentially allowing remote play on the Switch. Now that would be very interesting, because we see here that apparently the survey is talking about being able to play your games through an offline version of remote play. Now, to me, this sounds like Sony is working potentially on an app where you would basically be able to do the same exact thing you see happening with Xbox and Game Pass, where you open the app and you have access to certain games through PlayStation Now, and then you can potentially download them on a device if it's capable of running that, running it natively in that way. I don't know. There's a lot of things here in this survey that definitely hint that Sony is going to be opening up much more so come next generation. And I know that there's a lot of people who are against this, and I've expressed, how I just like things the traditional way. I like exclusive games because it pushes, it does a better job in providing more value from traditional consoles, which I'm all about, and I like to see traditional consoles really continue to do well and thrive. And I can't say for sure whether or not any of this stuff would truly negatively impact the console itself. Maybe it wouldn't, maybe it will. I don't think either company, that being Sony or Microsoft, has really pushed hard enough for us to definitively know. Because as we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of different reasons why Microsoft has struggled this generation. We can't just simply sit here and say that them putting their games on PC is the only reason why the Xbox One hasn't done well, because that's just not fair. That's also not logical. We know for a fact that that's not the only reason why. What I'm trying to say is that it's going to be interesting to see what Sony tries to do in the future. I think out of everything I'm seeing here, the thing that probably interests me the most, just because I would love to see something like this from Sony, is that portable DualShock 4 with a screen. Like, that sounds incredibly interesting to me, and I would love to see how Sony would market something like that, and how, the audience would respond. How would PlayStation fans respond to that? That sounds more in line with like something Sony would do before allowing you to stream your games to the Switch or something like that. Although if you think about it, being able to stream your games to the Switch, there's already a bunch of Switches out there. If Nintendo agreed with, and allowed something like that to happen, it could be extremely lucrative for Sony, and I don't necessarily think it would negatively impact console sales, because you're talking about streaming, right? It's just like what you can do with PlayStation Now on the PC. You can stream games, and I saw an article that apparently there's this new app. I don't know the name of it. I don't have it in front of me, but apparently Xbox One is getting this new app where you can actually stream PC games to your Xbox One. And so eventually, people will be able to stream certain games from PlayStation Now, certain PlayStation exclusives, technically speaking, through your Xbox One. And I've seen some people making a big deal about this, but I don't really see it as a big deal. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, like, who wants to play their games that way? You know what I mean? It's definitely cool if you're an Xbox One owner and you don't own a PlayStation for some reason, but I don't know. It's hard to say. We'll have to see how all this works out, but I thought you guys would find this incredibly interesting. I know I find it interesting, and at this point I want you to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think about what EA has to say about the PlayStation 5? Does it get you even more excited for it? And let me know what you think about this survey that Sony is putting out here, talking about remote play, offline remote play, potentially being able to use remote play through the Switch, and also them developing their own DualShock-like device that would be like a dedicated remote play device. I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say about that. Again, be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or found it informative. Really helps it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.